Okay. Take care of that. Take care of that. Anytime. Yep.
Oh, now you gotta hit the record down.
Yeah, I know. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me pause this.
Or live, family.
All right, tonight we've got Miguel Conner with us from Gnostic Radio, Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio. He's a professional storyteller, garage philosopher, and hedge historian from his website. And we've got his co-host Vance with us as well. I mean, every time I hear Aeon Byte, Vance, you're there. I don't know how much of a co-host you are, but you're always there when I listen. So welcome, guys.
Thank you. Glad to be on, guys.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you both finally. I've been listening to you for a while. I love your show. Miguel, honestly, I've learned so much from your show. I absolutely love it. I thought maybe we could start off here. We were talking about how long can we go without talking about COVID. I mean, we've talked about it a lot lately on the show. So
We need a buzzer.
I mean, but you know, but your show is so deep and there's so much to learn from there. I thought maybe we could start off by just both you guys kind of describing like what Aeon Byte is in Gnostic Radio and go from there.
Well, yeah, I mean, my interest as well as Vance. I'm just going to speak for Vance because that's how codependent I am. But I'll go ahead and say interest in Gnosticism came organically for me, just an interest after walking many paths like Kung Fu in the show. What was the name show Kung Fu, Vance? Forgot the name.
Yeah. Well, then there's Legend Continues and all that.
Yeah, yes. But like him, like Cain walking the earth and trying different philosophies, different religions, different, even some atheism. Just realized that the Gnostic philosophy, the aesthetic, the metaphysics really fit who I was, and it's been working for the last 13 years. And as part of my learning experience, as well as sharing with the world experience, I started the podcast Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio, as I call it, and it was always something just to share with people who are interested in these things, because I feel the ancient Gnostics and historical Gnostics have a lot to offer to the world, very relevant today. As some have said, we live in a Philip K. Dick world, and there's a good argument for that. And of course, Philip K. Dick was very influenced by Gnosticism. So, and we've only doing it, since I met Vance, I think 2017, 18, he came along. It's been really a full venture podcast, and we hope we have given people more choices about the Hermetic and the Gnostic path, and hopefully given some red pills out there. So that's, in a nutshell, that's me.
Right on.
About Vance.
Yes. Well, I got involved with the show when I was a listener, and one day Miguel does these killer intros. Sometimes there's an outro too.
Yep.
And I always found them very inspiring. When you talk to him in person, there's no clue as to how deep he really is. Only the intros really tell you. But anyway, one of his intros said, well, now as we come to the end of this endeavor, something like that. And I heard, oh my God, he's going to quit the show. What am I going? How am I going to hear more of these shows? So I got in contact with him and so forth. And next thing you know, I had become a supporter of the show. I got some equipment, started doing a little bit of web work with him. And now I do all the editing, the audio editing. And also, we confer with each other about various and sundry things. Miguel's the main guy. I'm the backup guy.
Nice.
I'm the guy behind the scenes. Miguel needs somebody to talk to about the show. He knows I'm 100% in because, like Miguel, I became a Gnostic a long time ago by myself. I decided to read the Bible one time, and I said, "Wait a minute, what is this guy doing in the Garden of Eden? He's lying, and the snake's telling the truth, and blah, 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 and on and on." So, I'm an independent guy, libertarian type of guy to begin with, and Gnosticism, was just the thing that fit my particular life orientation. I like to check things out for myself.
Yeah.
So there's a thumbnail description of how I got involved with the show.
Right on.
Still don't have your Ed McMahon laugh, which is what would just complete you being in the show there, Vance.
Right What were you gonna say, Darren? You got it.
That's like cool. That's like, you know, when I was listening to some of the podcasts back in the day, like Mysterious Universe and Grayling Report, I would have loved if I would just been like, hey man, just you get to like start being on the show.
Yeah.
That's got to be like, you know, like a mini dream come true.
Yeah, it was for me. And you know, my goal, and you don't hear me a lot in the shows because Miguel does his thing with most excellently. And I don't want to interfere with that, with the winning formula. Every once in a while, though, I have a burning question and I have a certain angle of attack, so to speak, with the guests. I want to get to the bottom of things. I'm the kind of person that gets to the bottom of things. So Miguel asks them about the book and talks about the various themes in the book. And then I sit there and I listen, and then some questions just kind of come to me. And then, you know, we coordinate behind the scenes so that I don't step on anybody. And so he'll turn over to me once in a while and I'll get to ask some questions. And usually I'm hoping that I represent the average guy, what he might want to ask on the show.
Yep, definitely.
So I represent the average guy.
Yeah, always good questions. Well, I don't know. Your questions come off a little more knowledgeable than the average guy. For me, they're usually pretty deep. But how long were you doing it before, Miguel? Before Vance showed up?
Started just sort of at Free Thought Media. It was an atheist station back in 2006, 7. And again, it was more learning about Gnosticism, doing a show every couple of weeks, if that, sometimes once a month. And I kept going because in 2006, I had no idea about Gnosticism. I had no street cred. But for example, I would ask the translators of the Nag Hammadi library. They said, sure, I'll do an interview. I would ask Bart Ehrman. Yeah, I'll do an interview. And I was like, man, I am getting these best-selling leading scholars of the world. So it just kept me going. And as my interests expanded, of course, it wasn't just classical Gnosticism, because then you obviously will naturally get into Kabbalah, Sufism, the Cathars, the Knights Templar, and then you'll go into Carl Jung and Philip K. Dick and William Burroughs. And suddenly I'm just doing the show for years, sort of as a part-time, and it doesn't end. And then I'm starting to see, you know, these Gnostic tenets really work well today, especially with the shit show that our world has turned into. It's sort of an Archon wet dream, how everything has turned out. I mean, what the Gnostics were warning about 2,000 years was going on seems to be more and more realistic. And I think that's a case that Vance and I have made.
If I may say so, you have an amazing voice for it as well. I think I could listen to you
wife
like
I wish my wife and kids would agree with that. but
Oh, they don't? I didn't know that.
No, far from it.
So you mentioned you're on an atheist. So the first, was that like an online radio or a pod? I guess it was a podcast, basically.
It was like, it was like a collective. It was a station back then. There was no iTunes, or it was hard to get on iTunes. So
you would have been like on the forefront then. Like 2006 is definitely, you know, there's only probably 100 or a few hundred podcasts on the planet.
Yeah, and one of the big ones was the Infidel Guy. It was an atheist podcast, and he started sort of a station, and a lot of them were ex-ministers, scholars, and I used to listen to a lot of these shows because I enjoyed the works of Robert Price and Acharya S. and Bart Ehrman were on this on a lot of these podcasts. And I said, well, isn't the enemy of your enemy a friend? How about Gnosticism? They're the great enemies of Orthodox and traditional religion throughout history. He's like, yeah, sure, come on. And he gave me a slot, and then it fell apart. And then after a few years, thank God the technology got better and you were able to start broadcasting independently. So these are the good old days, as they say, until they shut us all down.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. Until they license us and shut us all down. Yeah, that's coming soon enough.
We'll always find a way.
But for now, we're an essential service for now.
We'll just pretend we're talking about something else for the first 10 minutes and then go off the rails for 10. And it'll be like a 10-minute on, 10-minute off thing. So like guerrilla radio. Half is like fucking cupcake recipes. So you mentioned it was like an atheist radio station. So what is like 13 years of investigating Gnosticism? Were you an atheist at the time?
No, I was not an atheist.
No? Okay.
But again, I was interested in in the ideas and the activism and taking down apologetics and encroaching fundamentalist religion on the rights of people. So I found it good stuff. I certainly to this day I still gravitate or enjoy listening to atheist podcasts and free thinkers. Obviously, New Atheism sort of jumped the shark and went to some strange places, which I do not agree with, but that's what happens with most movements. What Thiel's saying, every movement starts as an ideal, turns into a business, and degenerates into a racket. So I think Vance and I have not degenerated into a racket because we haven't made that much money. So
yeah, back in my early podcasting, when I started listening to them, it was probably 2007, 2008, maybe 2006 even. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Like, I started out in a lot of that materialistic stuff, and then I kind of ended up going completely to the other side of things, which like the stuff we talk about now. But I just couldn't handle anymore the making fun of people that have seen a UFO, or people, like, it really started to, I went there for the science, and then I just felt the dogma just pushed me right away into all kinds
it's like
of
what did
stuff.
Jeff Kripal call them? They're not skeptics; they're professional debunkers.
Yeah.
No matter what you put that's outside of their narrow worldview, they've already found a way to debunk it without even listening to the entire argument.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, geez, after doing this show for 6-7 years now, I mean, a lot of the stuff we talked about is coming to fruition. I mean, whether it's conspiracies or consciousness or UFOs or a lot of stuff that we've been following the data on and the experiences, it's all becoming a little bit more sort of mainstream and known. There's a lot less ridicule now.
Just
a lot of
think how
people
many
are telling their stories, right? Remember?
Just think how many people have, like, how many times we're gonna be at that side that's just getting shit thrown at it.
Yeah. Right
now it's for Corona, but and like, I feel like in 2 years from now we'll be vindicated. And when we started with vaccines, everyone said we were fucking crazy, and now, I mean, it really is starting to seem like the tide is really turning on the vaccine ship more than ever. And I mean, even 9/11 seemed crazy 10 years ago, and now it's like everybody knows 9/11 is bullshit. So it's just like, it's just like you just got to put up with, like, you're going to get called crazy for a year, and then you'll be crazy half the time, and then in a couple of years you'll get some vindication.
And soon they'll be coming to you for your opinion on stuff.
And it's not even just conspiracy stuff. That goes from the consciousness standpoint, from some of the health stuff that was crazy. I mean, even the ayahuasca stuff, when we first started, that would have been kind of the fringier stuff. Now they're fucking, everyone and their dog is going on an ayahuasca trip, or the fasting, or the coffee enemas are coming up more and more, for fuck's sakes. I mean, I never thought I'd meet another human being that put coffee in their ass.
Yeah, the only thing we have that isn't coming true with your podcast and mine and Vance's ideas is the idea of freedom. No matter how much we talk about freedom, the more people want to give away their freedom. So that's one thing we have failed.
Or giving you crap for even suggesting freedom.
Yeah. Or that you're not free. I think that's the delusion. People think they're free when they're far from it. And again, doing I brought up coronavirus. This is the great test. Are we free or are we not? We are obviously not free as a society.
Yeah. We can't even say it. Some guys are calling it my Sharona Cyrus just to get away from it.
Exactly.
Their own name. So I was
listening. I think I saw you on Twitter. You said you're going to have David Icke as, like, don't put him on YouTube. You know what's going to happen to your video if you put him on YouTube. But sure is sunshine.
Oh, we don't even pay attention to our YouTube.
Nah, bring it on.
We're not monetized or anything. It's just a platform for us to go live, and they can do whatever the fuck they want with us.
There seems to be that if you're not monetized, they leave you alone. That's noticed so far, anyways. If you're not monetized, they seem to leave you alone. Yeah. Except for a few of Carlwood's episodes. But I mean, Carlwood pushes the fucking envelope. That guy's done like 4 Sandy Hook shows now, with Sandy Hook in the title.
Yeah, Pizza Guy. He's done everything under the sun, and I know he gets videos from 3 years ago, knocked down and whatever. So, he's walking the line for sure.
It's funny how your show, which is more spiritual and Gnostic, still crosses over with a lot of these things, right? I mean, once you start digging into the truth, let's say, or deconstructing the lies, anyways, I mean, it all leads to the same kind of thing in a way. We overlap with this war on consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, as others have pointed out, and I have pointed out, the Gnostics were the original conspiracies in history. 2,000 years ago, there were, as you said, the crazy guys who said, you know what, these religions are bullshit. These governments are oppressive systems. The entire universe is a construct to keep us trapped by these alien beings. And so, and they were ranting and raving, and they had the same treatment. They were called crazy, persecuted, and they were basically the outcasts and geeks of culture. So, and throughout history, that sort of Gnostic vibe has at least secret societies and other groups have appreciated the Gnostic ethos and what it brings to the table, and appreciated what they did, as they were the ultimate free thinkers, believers in freedom of expression, and the ones who were, and of course, probably history's greatest anarchists. They were the ones who said, enough, we're done. We're done with these. It's all about the inner individual, the inner light, and everything else can pretty much go to hell. We have to be free, or else what's the point in even being here? And of course, their conclusion that we were trapped in, as they say, in this prison planet, in the Matrix. So the Matrix is, of course, the great Gnostic gospel of this century.
The more I've heard your show in the last couple of years, the more now I keep coming across Gnosticism when I'm reading old esoteric books or whatever, and it gets pretty deep. So what I can't, like, I don't know that much about it myself, but what are the overlaps with Christianity, or how does it, I mean, is there a couple paths that separate out from Gnosticism too, a couple different paths? I thought I was reading something about that, and then
yeah, I mean, you got to look at the soteriology. Traditional Christianity, Jesus dies for your sins, right? And the way to salvation is to have faith. To the Gnostic Christians, as saying with the Hermetics, it's what saves you is a special type of information. Again, thinking of Philip K. Dick, he said, since the universe is made of information, then it can be said that information will save us. So the Gnostics believe the greatest of sins wasn't, I guess in Christianity, falling from the garden. They had a different take on the garden. But the greatest sin was ignorance. There's like the Gospel of Philip says, ignorance is the mother of all sins. And basically, we are ignorant not only of the fake reality that surrounds us, but we are ignorant of our divine spark, and you associate it with consciousness, or extended the extended idea of the extended mind. And we are ignorant that we are better than anything of this universe, and we can make contact with this supreme intelligence, what they call the alien God, because we were trapped in this universe by the construct of these beings called the Archons, led by a super bad guy called the Demiurge, who they associated with the God of the Old Testament. So, of course, that was very controversial because in those days, obviously, the Old Testament was supposed to be part of the Christian resume or the Christian pedigree, but the Gnostics said no way, that the God of the Old Testament could be the father of Jesus, or even could be a good guy. But again, the Jesus of the Gnostics, or Hermes, or and as they call them, the Gnostic revealers, he is somebody that woke you up by giving you a special type of information and showing you certain type of mysteries and rituals. If we go to the Matrix, of course, Morpheus would be the Gnostic revealer. He's the one who approaches Neo and says, look, you're having these dreams, you're uncomfortable because you know there's something in the world that's wrong. It's like a splinter in your mind driving you mad. Take the red pill, which was basically sort of information, and suddenly you'll wake up to the reality of the world. So yes, Gnosticism and Christianity would be very different, as Gnosticism was very different than other religions, simply for its antagonistic distrust of gods, governments, and most of sensible reality.
right. Is the overlap in Hermeticism partly to do with that word? Was it Hermes Trismegistus that heard that word, the one word of reason?
Yeah, I think in the constructs, or when we're trying to figure out where Gnosticism and Hermetism started, it probably started in Alexandria in Egypt. And that was a great city, as Carl Jung called it, the city where East meets West. It was the city where all these ideas were coming together. The Christian Gnostics and the Hermetics more than likely started at either dissatisfied Jews or dissatisfied pagans who would find these, you might say, teachers or gurus who were holding on to the ancient Egyptian mysteries that had been lost because of the Greek conquests and time. And Greek religiosity, especially the mysteries, was very about the experience. It was very personal and it was very mystical. It was about these flights through the heavens and through passing these sort of beings in time and going outside of time. And these groups started congregating and getting together in lodges in probably Alexandria, started mixing in a lot of Zoroastrianism with sort of Hellenistic philosophy. And these groups started to eventually developed into the Gnostics. I mean, you could even say Paul certainly could be considered an early Gnostic. I mean, he's bringing sort of this mystery religion where there's this cosmic Christ who's crucified by these powers and principalities. But again, there is information that he's bringing to his churches that will transform you. And he talks about Sophia and Archons and all this good stuff. So you can say Paul might have been part of this vibe that was going on in the Middle East that likely started from Alexandria.
A lot of these old mystery schools, didn't they have separate classes or separate people that would only be allowed to access this knowledge until you proved or until you went through this initiation? You really weren't, you know, I don't know about if good enough or smart enough, maybe the right intellect to absorb all this knowledge. Did that continue on through Gnosticism as well, or did it open up more to the?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably small lodges of people who wanted to be initiated. I don't think there was obviously probably no hierarchies beyond the Hierophant who gave you these mysteries, and maybe even not. There's the story of Marcus the magician, this sort of the wizard in France, and he had his like coven of women who would join him, and they would roll dice to switch places. One week, one would be the bishop, one would be the baptizer, and so forth. So there was these small groups, and of course, simply by understanding this gnosis, this divine knowledge, and doing these very esoteric rituals pretty much put you separate from others. Later on with the Cathars and the Manichaeans, they sort of separated into hearers and perfects. And the hearers were those like St. Augustine. He was once a Manichaean, he was a Gnostic, he was a hearer. Basically, you could sort of subscribe to the religion or the movement, but you didn't have to do the things that they ask you, which usually ended up being vegetarianism, pacifism. Eventually, if you moved up, some of them said no sex, although some Gnostic groups was the opposite. Or some was like, you had to have more sex because they had different ideas how to approach it. Some were very teetotalers, and some other Gnostics were just big drug sex bingers. But eventually, if you wanted to join the perfects and really know the inner mysteries, you had to make that commitment to the lifestyle. But for most people, you could just stay on the heroes on the surrounding areas.
What about the Cathars back then? I mean, I thought that religion seemed to be an easy one to swallow as well, similar to Gnosticism. Yeah, they got hammered out pretty hard, didn't they? They didn't last very long. Like, did you learn about that one at all?
Yeah, I mean, that was, of course, they're made famous by the Da Vinci Code, but Dan Brown's the Da Vinci Code. And they were likely an extension of the classic Gnostics and the Manichaeans who settled in southern France. And they had the view that instead of this evil demiurge ruling the world, they actually said Satan ruled the world.
Right.
And
Lucifer was in there too, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Satan and Lucifer were basically the Rex Mundi, the king of this world. And Jesus had nothing to do with even the Old Testament. In fact, I think the Cathars believed, like some of the ancient Gnostics, that Jesus and Satan were brothers and they were fighting. Later on, the Mormons would adopt this theology. But they only believed in the Gospel of John. They rejected the Old Testament and all the other Gospels. They really put Mary Magdalene high up. They hated the church. They thought the cross was an evil symbol. And again, it was sort of a special type of knowledge that really helped you out versus sort of acts of faith or believing in this and that.
Wow. Vance, do you have anything to add to those questions at all? Are those answers?
Yeah, to me, I think a lot of Gnosticism, even way back then, is got to do with whether or not you're going to just follow the leader or, follow the inner self, so to speak, and what you think is true. And I think that probably explains almost all of Gnosticism. That's the root of Gnosticism, is to recognize that there's something within you that you can dig into and look at the world and see what's what. And as opposed to just caving in and saying, well, this priest or this leader or this politician is, I'm going to follow them. So it's basically followers versus, I wouldn't even say leaders, because leaders just the other side of the follower. Followers versus people that are independent. And that's the root of Gnosticism that I see. And I think there's a cross between Gnosticism and the perennial philosophy, the mystical philosophy also, because with mystical philosophy, you realize that you're connected with the, what Gnostics call the alien God or the God above God. And that's the reason we can actually have some insight into the world, regardless of and anybody else is trying to convince us of.
So that could also be the Akashic records for some as well. I mean, there seems to be all these parallels through the ancient mythologies that sort of mean the same. I think they mean the same thing.
Yeah, that's one model, right? That everything that's ever happened or that will happen or whatever is supposed to be in the Akashic records. And in actual fact, when the way I see it, when you look very deeply into it, there's one giant infinite thing that has differentiated itself in some ways and is you and me and everybody else. And therefore that's parallel to the Akashic records. It's probably the simplest way to think about it.
Yeah.
Huh. So going through all that Gnostic knowledge, did that give you any sort of sense of the timeline back then of where, like, maybe when those Egyptian mystery schools were coming from? Like, do you think that was carried over from the Cataclysm or something, like Randall Carlson and guys like that would allude to, or is it from Babylon?
The story about Atlantis, right? Atlantis is one of the big roots, that people point to, because the Egyptian history kind of fades out after you go back in certain ways. But, the Greeks wrote about Atlantis. And I think from what I've seen, there's a connection between Egypt and Atlantis. And Atlantis, the legends say that they had more of a connection to this powerful source of the universe and could do more things with it. Who knows if it's true? I have a feeling that's probably true. So, but as far as I don't have any personal knowledge of the timelines. I've studied, Egyptology a little bit, especially when King Tut came by in the 80s. That was pretty cool. But I was in the Rosicrucians for a while.
It seems like a lot of these ancient mysteries do leave it open. There's Atlantis right behind you there. Leave it open for that to be okay. Like for the ancient advanced civilization being before the Younger Dryas, like before the Ice Age, the pyramids. I mean, some of the older books. I mean, and it's funny because thinking about this now, pushing against the mainstream, Egyptologists and the archaeologists thinking that really it only goes back 10, 12,000 years. But some of these older books that were written before the 1900s, they were saying that that the pyramids could go back 70,000 years back then. I mean, this isn't a new theory of our history. People have been thinking this way for a long time, it seems.
Many people think that the Great Pyramid, for example, is way older than they say it is.
Yeah.
And the things that are built into it are amazing. You probably have had people on the show talking about the circumference of the earth and the pyramid inches related to this and that. There's a guy named Peter Tompkins, I think it was, and wrote a book on that.
Yeah. About
all the things that are embedded in the Great Pyramid. But there's Akhenaten too. You've heard of him. He was the first known monotheist, right, Miguel? And there's a theory that where the Hebrews came from was they, in fact, even according to their own history, they came out of Egypt, but they were followers of Akhenaten. And when he fell out of favor or when he died, they had to flee Egypt because all the priests and so forth, they came back with the old gods, Thoth and, Set and Osiris and Isis and everybody else. They drove them out. So there might be a connection there. There's a lot of interesting theories, but the bottom line is this. I don't know, Miguel, should I hit him with my theory of everything?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, definitely.
This
We're
is where you lay it all out.
Yeah.
Okay. I think anything that is possible in this universe has happened or will happen, and it'll happen again and again and again. And that includes all of us sitting here. We could be sitting here 1,000,000 years from now, 1,000,000 years ago, having the same or similar conversation. So the first question is, which instance are we? Are we the 1,000,000 years ago or now or later or whatever? Like, how can we tell which ones we are? And all these different theories, there's probably some universe that it really did happen that way. Anything that's internally consistent and consistent with each of our lifetimes and the things that we've seen, if we use reason and so forth to see what's a conflict, anything that is possible is a possible past. So there's multiple futures and multiple pasts. So I don't like to argue too much with anybody over what happened, like did this happen or that happened, you know. And hey, you know what? It's all possible. How do we know? You know, all we know is this moment. So
You've got the Mandela effect. Well, don't forget about the Mandela effect.
Oh yeah, Berenstain or Berenstein, right?
Yeah.
Well, does that fit into your? So that's a different path then, or a different possibility?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I could easily imagine the same exact universe up to this point, from the Big Bang to here, except one was Berenstain and one was Berenstein.
Yeah. That's just, it sounds like my dad. I remember my dad saying at one point, if you can think of it, it's possible. Like anything you can think is possible.
There you go.
Yeah, very. And I didn't realize at the time when he said that to me, how like.
What if I think you're an asshole?
It's possible.
That's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Star Trek did an episode of that. I don't know if you remember the one where all of a sudden they were on, I think it was called Yesterday's Enterprise, where all of a sudden they were on a different version of the Enterprise, but Guinan, being infinitely wise, said something's wrong, but I don't know what. Remember that one? Did you guys watch that?
No.
Anyway, it was the same thing. It was one of these timeline science fiction things, you know, the different timelines. But, you know, it's a multiverse, many timelines. Time is multidimensional.
So where do the Archons fit into everything? Who are the Archons? What are they up to?
No good, man.
Are they the lizards?
Good. They could be. They could be. I mean, obviously in Gnosticism, the Archons, which is just Greek for rulers, are the, you might say, haughty bureaucrats, engineers of this universe. And you can say engineers if you want to get into ancient alien engineers of humans. So, and the Gnostics saw them as the rulers of fate, the rulers of the stars, and ultimately the rulers of civilization and this earth. And they're, at least from the text, I know there's different views. The Gnostics saw them very much as the Matrix, where we had the divine spark, so it basically fueled them. It was their food for them and even the universe. So their goal was to keep us asleep and basically feed off of us, very much like Neo in the Matrix. Instead of the electricity, the Gnostics called it the divine spark.
Right.
Obviously, that idea has sort of changed in modern times with cats like David Icke or John Lamb Lash, where they think that the Archons feed off of our negative emotions, that they instill fear and all that, so that then they can eat from our suffering. Literally, I don't know if that's in the ancient Gnostic text. The Archons are depicted as very, they enjoy raping, they're bullying, they're chaotic. They're basically, again, bureaucrats. They're sort of a caricature of the Roman bureaucracy, or any Roman or any government for that matter, when you think about it. And they will use good and bad methods to keep us ignorant. If it has to be evil, fine. If they have to buy us through bread and circuses, is just as good. So now, whether they're aliens or not, I mean, again, the Gnostics saw, and this includes the Mandeans, the CD saw them as, yes, the rulers of the stars who came from the stars, and the alien god of the Gnostics, or the god above God, like Vance just mentioned, would be this intelligence that's beyond the stars, which humans really do belong to. And of course, this, obviously, the Gnosticism ties into the Sumerian myths. It ties into the myth of Prometheus. It ties certainly into Zoroastrianism in the myths, where Ahriman is the ruler of this world. So the Gnostics were simply not, they were innovators, but they were not alone in this feeling.
Do you have any thoughts about the original question that Vance was answering about the ancient, advanced ancient humans, and is there room for that in the Gnosticism?
There certainly would be.
Yeah.
It does translate very well into science fiction. That's why science fiction is so popular in Gnosticism, whether it's Westworld or The Matrix or so many other movies, The Wizard of Oz, you name it, Minority Report. It just works really well. The idea of being trapped in an illusionary world, that we are the creations of playthings of these sort of, game bosses who we have to fight to get through the levels and find our true reality, just works really well. So yeah, anything's like, I'm like Vance, anything's possible. I mean, I know I'm trapped. I know I need to be free. I know that there is a part of me that's greater than this universe. It's a matter of the steps I need to do to get there.
What is the original Gnostics take on psychedelics? Do they have any practices with them, or how does that?
Oh yeah.
How does that?
I have to say, we've gone 10 minutes without bringing up the stupid virus. So
what
this
virus?
Is a victory for you. What virus? It's gone. Mandela effect away. It's gone.
We high five.
You're gonna walk out the door.
I was just about to ask you about it, and then he brought up these questions.
Yes. There were groups. I mentioned Marcus the Magician, and according to the church fathers, they would put. He would get his wine, and he would put all these herbs, and as soon as his witches took it, they'd go into ecstasy. I mean, that's one of the features of Gnosticism, is a ecstatic mystical experience. That's always part and parcel of any Gnostic group or thrust. And then you have some of the texts talking about certain plants and stuff that you're supposed to create a Eucharist from and take it. So certain Gnostic groups were certainly into the psychedelics. Others weren't. I mean, it really depended on the group. It's almost like they thought of, what do we need to get to an ecstatic experience or state of mind? And one group would say, well, we're going to have sex magic. The other group said, we're going to have psychedelics. Another group said, we're just going to meditate until, or we're going to do vowel sounds or magic. So that's the thing. Again, they were anarchists. It's like, and they knew we're all different. What might work for me is not going to work for you. They never had a one size fit all, and you could choose all these different lodges to find the way to experience and get out of your head.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool.
Did they have any sort of take on what that state was in relation to like if they were looking at the world as, this sort of weird unreal simulation, but all way back then, did they? Because it almost seems in my mind, and I kind of come along those same thoughts where this is all like not really here and mostly empty space, and these weird shit happens all the time when you think about stuff, and so it's like the psychedelics seem to sort of half open that side up a little bit, or maybe open the curtain a little bit. I'm wondering if they had any theories on that, because it sounds like they were kind of way ahead of the curve and thinking of this as a big fucking, reality as a simulation. Or
yeah, they certainly saw it that way. But if you read we were talking about the Egyptian religion, if you read some texts from like 300 or 400 BC, it does show the initiate taking these steps to suddenly leave your body. You didn't even have to be dead like the other Egyptian works, and how you would travel through different layers of reality into sort of these astral realms, and you would meet these guardians, and these guardians, you had to say different passwords or magical rituals to get your soul through it. And eventually you would commune, you might say, with the supreme intelligence, and then bring it down and be transformed when you got back to it. And the Gnostic rituals, again, it's the initiate gets into an ecstatic state of mind. Again, you're talking about ayahuasca. When I did ayahuasca, it mirrors the Gnostic rituals, because when I did ayahuasca for like an hour or two, I am living hell. Every fear, every bad memory, every projection I had is coming to me, and the voices in my head. In the Gnostic rituals, when you start doing these rituals, you're going to the underworld and you're meeting Hades and Saturn and these demons, and they're tearing you apart. And you go through this gauntlet. Same with the mystery religion schools, and all of a sudden you start going up through the stars, and you're going through different stars. When I did ayahuasca, it was actually the same. I started rising up through the universe, and I could also feel my body leave the universe, and it was a sense of bliss and ecstasy that I'd never felt. So there is, to summarize, there's a huge parallel between the ayahuasca shamanistic ritual, that what the Gnostics were doing, just as what the ancient Egyptians were doing 300 years before Christ.
Wow.
That's interesting. You mentioned like the code words or the passwords, because like my last DMT experience, when I first broke through, there was like this, you know, almost that like the same dude everyone talks about. You know, he kind of looks like Colonel Sanders, but way more down to business and way cooler and like kind of crazy psychedelic looking. But he said this word to me like twice, and it was a word in a language I'd never heard before, but he like, it seemed important. And I've never been able to remember the word. And I'm wondering if you have ever heard anything like that. Because, I mean, ayahuasca and DMT are basically the same experience, just one's a little more prolonged. Or if you have any examples of what those code words might be, because maybe if you it's not reason, for fuck's sake. If you said the word, I might be like, that was it.
Yeah.
And you could solve
Crispy
like
batter? No.
hashtag
original recipe. Yeah.
Now that's a good one. The original recipe, the beginning of the universe.
The architect in the Matrix kind of looks like Colonel Sanders, or I guess more like
He does. I think you're onto something there.
Shit. Maybe it was psychedelic architect.
No, I never met that. Mine was completely different. I saw this horrible giant dark being. He was the abyss, the void, and I called him Abraxas. That's what used to be my sort of name when I started the show, but it was pure darkness swallowing all light into the world. It was a complete void, but I knew this being encompassed everything and swallowed everything. Then I got all chicken shit and sort of went down. I think when I did it with my wife, she encountered a serpent that was trying to tell her these falsities. I guess my wife being Catholic or not Greek Orthodox, of course, that would be the cultural manifestation of what these entities would appear like.
Interesting. So was that Mother Ayahuasca that she saw then? Probably.
I'm sorry?
Was that Mother Ayahuasca then? Like the typical dragon or reptile or?
I think so. She was able to get she laughed at the serpent, and the serpent got mad and it just went away.
Oh, wow.
So it happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna have
find
to
your word one day, Darren.
I'm gonna have to go back in.
You're gonna have to go back in. What was the word?
Reason.
I think it's been almost 6 months.
Yeah.
The last time I think I went in a little cocky, and I came out a little humble and a little nervous about going back in. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to do it again if I had time. It is a gauntlet. It is brutal, but the insights and the release is amazing. Yeah, more people should be on that shit.
I haven't tried the ayahuasca yet. That's going to be a totally different experience. Mine was more like getting hit by a fucking Mack truck. The ayahuasca seems a little bit more navigable.
It depends too who prepares it, who's your teacher and guide. You have to have a good guide, a good group to do it, good structure, so you don't just completely go insane. So like anything, it depends who your teacher and your atmosphere, and of course, like you were saying, go in with a humble heart. If you've got a lot of shit in your subconscious you're not working through, it's going to be painful. So it depends. There's no two experiences that are the same that I've ever done.
So what's the Gnostic viewpoint on this pandemic? How do, let's talk
Come
about
on.
it. No, it's from an esoteric point of view. I mean, this is like.
Well, that's an easy one. I mean, the Gnostic view would be never believe the official narrative of anything, even your own brain.
Yeah.
No, that's not, you start default distrusting that somebody's lying to you. Somebody's feeding off of your ass. Somebody's exploiting you. Most things of this world don't have your best interest. Second would be, this is a world created by a mad God. So of course there are things out there that are going to kill you for no reason. So it would be a pretty dim view, but I think it's very positive because it always tells you have to go in. What did Peter Gabriel sing in the Carpet Crawlers? You got to go in to get out. You have to find what's working. You have to find the answers within you and be very critical of what's out there. And that would be it. What do you think, Vance?
Well, I look at everything and I let the conclusions kind of bubble up to the surface because there's so much disinformation out there. But that's the soul of Gnosticism, right? In other words, you don't believe this guy or don't believe that guy. Of course, I like to make fun of Grouchy Fauci, or Dr. Faucistus. Because, you know, like but what I see is so much propaganda. I think a good Gnostic has to be trained in spotting propaganda, because that's the way, you know, you're controlled from the outside, from the authorities. They use all these tricks. And one of the tricks is to manipulate through fear. Fear is very powerful. You know, that's another. I mean, there was years ago, I kind of went through an initiation of what fear really was. And I don't know how it happened or what got triggered it, but it was like an initiation, but it was a real life initiation. I was working on a dive computer that people would use to dive and decompress and all that stuff. And it was such a difficult project. I practically had a breakdown afterwards. And after that, something snapped. And then I had no fear for about a month. I wasn't afraid of anything. It's not like I ran in front of trucks or anything, but it showed me just how controlled I was by fear. And after that, the fears, you know, faded back. You know, there was an end to it. And then I became more or less like I was, except that there's something extra up there now, right? Now, you know, it's like Muad'Dib said, you know, the fear is the mind killer. So as far as the epidemic goes, it's coming out now, that all the disinformation, and I watch for the disinformation, the propaganda. A long time ago, I worked with a fairly famous guy who started a very famous company. In fact, he was my mentor in my youth. And we were sitting in an airport one time and he had his paper open and I was just sitting there and I said, anything good in the paper? And he put it down. He said, you see this paper? He says, everything in this paper, somebody paid to have here. And this isn't just a crackpot guy or a conspiracy guy. This is a guy that, you know, a well-known guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but you would know.
Bill Gates?
No, but he's from Stanford. Okay, he's from Stanford.
Of course.
Yes, and they routed him out of his own company. So, you know, so that's all the hints I'll give. But yeah, and he would no, probably more famous than him. No, this guy, yeah, you wouldn't have an internet if it wasn't for this guy.
I like the Muad'Dib reference. I mean, I find that Dune series is to be one of the better portrayals of the like hero archetype turning into a real asshole in the end. But,
yep.
Where was I going to go?
Well, I was going to go. I'll jump in here. So, I mean, a lot of the people we talk to, a lot of the people that listen to our show and the chats, are friends of ours here. They're kind of, you know, they're spotting this propaganda. They're spotting this misinformation. And they're realizing that, I mean, this is maybe some people that haven't realized how bad it was, and now they're realizing how bad it's been. But what do you do how do you take action from a Gnostic standpoint? Like, what do we do once you realize that we're in this sort of illusion? There's all this propaganda. You guys have a voice. We have a voice. But other people are asking me, like, how do we, you know, mobilize, or how do we fight against this? You know, Bill Gates is saying out there, he's out there on this program saying, until we vaccinate the globe, this is going to be regular life. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, we're not going to take your vaccine, your global vaccine. Like, he's really out there saying, you know, he's going to vaccinate everybody. So what you know, from a Gnostic viewpoint, what's the action look like? Or is there any?
Well, I would say first, as I tell people, you've got this. I mean, this is perfect, because as Gnostic minded, we've always been outcasts and geeks. We have always been social distance and quarantined by culture. That's why we leaned on science fiction, drugs, skateboarding, thinking Bruce Lee was the true Messiah. I mean, we were made for this world that now is entire. We saw through the insanity of thing. We suffered because ourselves, we had our own crazy minds to deal with. So this is we're perfect for this. So the second thing I would say is, like I say, don't believe anything. Go inside and don't attack. You have to attack the fear, as Vance said, because this, whatever's going on is amazing, I feel, because it really hits so many different fears. And fear, as we were talking about, it's one of the things you lose after these mystery religions or Gnostic rites, because at the end of the day, one of the things you realize that all fear is wanting control. I'm afraid because I don't want to lose control of a person, of money, of my health. This is amazing because it hits us for all our fears: financial fear, health fear, our social fear, which is a huge one that nobody talks about, isolating human beings where we can't create egregores and connect with others. Huge damage, but it also strikes right at our fear. So if we just realize, if we attack the fear, which is simply wanting us to control, and we just let go, like Brad Pitt says in Fight Club, just let go, and you'll have a near life experience, we're going to be fine. So in many ways, this world is ending and things probably won't be the same. But I think all of us here on the edges of town, in the shadows, again, freaks and outcasts, we really were made for this world, and we can thrive in this world. I don't want to bring a corny AA saying, but sometimes it keeps you grounded. But as they say, when things are falling apart, it usually means they're coming together. So if you keep your eyes open, cut through all the bullshit, don't trust, and attack the fear and those your baser instincts, things are going to work out.
Yeah, well said. I like that don't go base kind of and the idea, I mean, the first...
Go stoic, man. Go stoic. The Gnostics were part of that stoic cynic vibe in the first century. Good time to go stoic.
The old Marcus Aurelius. I like the idea of looking at yourself first. That's sort of like you can only believe your own fucking thoughts half of the time if you're lucky. So how can you start believing like any of this other shit?
Yeah,
like,
well, yeah, the Demiurge is in your mind. You gotta go still. You gotta still yourself and separate what's real and what isn't real. And that takes, well, it really just takes just sitting still and seeing things going around you, and you'll see with the difference. Just as it's easy to see how the propaganda out there, which is all the media, is just so obvious.
Start feeling the hooks in your own mouth.
Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah. I mean, but from all sides, I don't even know what to believe when you see people getting arrested for being too close together. I don't even know if I believe that now. I mean, or the cops, getting involved and all. Yeah. It's also just measuring both sides, trying to be.
Yeah, right. It's true and it's false, right? I mean, it's like they want you to be afraid that's going to happen to you. But like they'll run around. I mean, the press has been guilty of this. They'll run around like, you remember that thing where they were showing pictures of Italy and saying it was New York or whatever. They make things up to make a point.
Yeah.
But then it's manipulation, emotional manipulation to sell papers or to get viewers or whatever. It's always follow the money. And also there's more, more people like Gates, who obviously to me has a messianic complex. He wants to save the world. But he's been on record, and a lot of other people are on record. And this is the time I should bring up the dichotomy. There's one big dichotomy, the collective versus the individual, right?
Yeah.
That's at the center of so many things. See, Bill Gates wants to save the collective at the expense of the individual, right? I don't care how many people die of the vaccine, or if not everybody's, and I have to take away people's freedom for their own good, And this is the dichotomy. It's built into this world. We'll never escape it, but we can keep our eyes open and kind of dance around it if we're lucky.
Maybe he's the Antichrist. We had
too many. Yes. It used to be Obama, then it was Bush, and then it was the Pope.
Well, if you just keep
the number
picking
of the beast,
people, then
98, Windows 98.
Yeah, something I also like to say. There's a saying from the Gospel of Thomas, which I think it really hits in the crux of having good psychology or mental state of being these days, and it goes. If you bring out what is within you, it will save you. If you do not bring out what is within you, it will destroy you. I think this is a good time for people to really get out what's inside of them, because if not, it will destroy you. Your shadow will consume you. You will project on others. I mean, I tell people, if you're feeling insecure and want to scream out the window, whatever theories you have, just do it. Don't repress yourself. If you have a work of art, you might want let's get it all out there, because again, if we can empty ourselves, what we empty, we will see answers. We will see what's in us that needs to be worked on. So that's certainly something I suggest to people. And I tell people, if you want to email me and just vent all your frustrations, because these are some intense times, they're overwhelming times, they're dark times, and things are probably changing forever. Just let it out. You'll be surprised how better you feel, or what great answers you'll have, or what new things you might want to create. Maybe it's time for you to change careers, or create that work of art you want to do. There's opportunity out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it kind of leads me into what I wanted to ask you about next. Is on the last few of your podcasts, I've heard you talking about maybe doing more of a esoteric recovery or a Gnostic recovery type podcast. So it made me think, when I emailed you, it was my 12th year anniversary, my sobriety date. And I've been reading this. I had this little weird epiphany the other day where I was reading The Secret Teachers of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. And I realized in there, Brachus and Adonis were resurrected on March 25th.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that is pretty cool that my sobriety date lands on these ancient mythic. I don't know, what are they even considered, gods or demigods, or when they were supposedly resurrected. I was like, that's fucking awesome.
March 25th?
Yeah, March 25th.
That's the day the studio was smashed by the stolen SUV.
Oh, that's right. Was that really? Yeah, wow. We were resurrected again, maybe after that. Yeah, holy day. So, what are your thoughts on that then? I mean, because your last little advice there was kind of recovery related a little bit as well. I mean,
yeah, for sure. I mean, my actually sobriety day, and I just forgot, was April 1st. I think when we're emailing, I tell you about it, but I'm like, well, I can't go to a meeting. I can't get my stupid coin. So I guess I'm going to wait when they reopen, I'm getting that coin. But yeah, 8 years for me. And yeah, that's something I have definitely shared on my show. I think it definitely ties into Gnosticism and other esoteric systems. I think it ties into the work of Carl Jung, and Carl Jung definitely had correspondence with Bill W. Bill W., through indirect ways, was inspired by Carl Jung. I think the second and third step are inspired by Jung, as they say. Yeah. So there is a connection. So I tried to share here and there about my experiences of recovery, what has worked for me, try to reach out to people if they want to talk, or maybe I can show them different things that worked for me, and so forth. So I thought one of the extensions of the show would be podcasts, or eventually called Finding Hermes, because as Richard Smoley said, Hermes is the god of the mind, but he's also a trickster god. And that was on purpose, because at the end of the day, as Morpheus tells Neo, you're a prison. It's not a visible prison. It's a prison for your mind. Our minds really will create the greatest prisons, not being locked in our apartments or in jails or whatever. It really first starts with getting out of the prison that is our minds and being free in our heads. And that means getting over addiction, getting over fears, getting over all the monkey thoughts in our head. So that's why I keep telling you, you got to attack the fear first, clear your head, and then go out to fight the powers that are out there suspending our rights, because those rights they are part of your divine spark. They don't come from anything of this earth, and we can't let them take that away.
Wow. Are you thinking of doing that in a separate feed or just separate episodes? I mean, I know you've had a lot of people on already talking about
I don't know yet. I bounced it off with Vance. I don't know if it'll be a separate course, one-on-one video, or another podcast. Obviously, a second podcast is a lot of work. We're already pretty overwhelmed just putting out one show a week as it is. So again, the god Saturn only gives you so much time.
Yeah. Is lockdown helping you get more podcasts out, or are you not locked down?
Who's he talking to?
You.
Oh, you're talking to me. Oh, you were looking at the screen.
Yeah,
I'm talking to both of you.
He's kind of
you're on this screen too. You just can't see it.
Oh, okay.
You're everywhere.
You're watching Dr. Fauci or something like that.
I'm yelling at my TV.
He's watching Dr. Fauci talking about the dangers of vaccines, which was very shocking that he actually spent so much time telling us about the dangers that half the population doesn't even realize that they're dangerous. That could be like a perfect red pill for a lot of people.
Is Dr. Fauci the little Trump's little dude there?
Yeah.
I shouldn't say little dude because that's like a hate crime.
What was your
according
question
to you.
again?
That's hate speech.
What was your question again? To Miguel?
What?
I've already forgot what your question
Oh,
was.
I asked if lockdown was going to help them
yeah.
get more content out.
Well,
Or if you
lockdown,
weren't
I mean,
locked down or if you're essential.
I'm still working during the day for my day job.
Are you?
So yes, somehow they fired everybody, and I have survived. So I think it's a punishment. But and even then, I have I have other freelance projects that I do. So yeah, lockdown has not really changed my life too much. So
That's like Graham and I with it. It started coming up for like, oh, we're gonna get all this extra content done, and now we're just like still working full time, and nothing's really changed. It takes fucking longer to go get groceries now, and everything fucking takes longer when I leave the house because I gotta stand in a 6-foot square.
really,
But that's okay. I
you
mean,
guys have to wear masks?
No, not
no.
yet. No, it's pretty. There's not a lot of people wearing them. I mean, it's still seems fairly free and somewhat normal out there. Besides, standing in.
I bought a gas
in the
mask
lineup.
from the Army surplus store just in case masks become mandatory at the store. I've got a Soviet one because it looked the creepiest. And then I have a plague mask coming in on Friday.
Oh boy!
So that me and my
I wanted
girlfriend
one
can
of
go to
those.
the store together
The
in
big
case you have to wear
beak, yeah.
masks. Yeah, it's got the beak and the whole 9 yards. So we'll have a gas mask and a beak.
Better be careful. They're coming in with 6-foot beaks now. They're kind of hard
Perfect.
to hold your head up.
You just need I seen buddy that had made a hat out of pool noodles. So he just had 6-foot pool noodles all around his
I
hat.
saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
I feel
But
like
make sure
those
you
are
get the
guys.
wings.
Those are the guys
What do you
that they're the heroes, the unsung heroes of the pandemic that are just sort of subtly trolling it.
Yep. Yeah, make sure you order the wings with the plague mask. That's the best combination of accessories.
Look like a kenku.
Right on. Well, before we start wrapping up, where can everyone track you down?
Track me down. I'm at my house under her.
What's your address?
So I won't be going anywhere. So it's but no, the show is Aeon Byte, which includes the podcast, books, information, social media, all that good stuff is at thegodabovegod.com. And that's where you'll find everything. Want to sign up to the newsletter or shoot me a message? We're always open and glad to hear from peeps who are tired of this illusionary world.
Nice. Vance, do you have anything to say?
Just it's been a pleasure being on the show, meeting you guys, and I too will go back to my day job after this and
Good.
fly a few satellites here and there.
Nice.
Right on. Well, keep up the good work, gents. Stay
Likewise.
safe.
Thanks.
Doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I
We've
highly
only
recommend-
Started fighting. We've only started
Yeah,
fighting.
keep
Yeah,
fighting the
exactly.
power, or
Yeah.
start fighting the power, or whatever. Do something great.
Honestly, thanks for doing
Get
your
off the
show. It's
couch.
one of the best podcasts we listen to. I love it. I know I say that
thank
all
you.
the time, but honestly, it's in top of my feed all the time. So
I just
Oh,
love
thank
your
you, thank
voice the most
Glad
of
you
all.
enjoy it.
yeah.
Have you
Thank
ever
you,
thought
guys.
about
Good night.
narrating? You'd be a great narrator.
Yeah,
just
he
saying.
reads, he reads his intros are like narrations in a
Oh,
way, right?
the
Yeah.
chats are
Yeah,
just
yeah.
over and over and over about how fantastic your intros are. So don't stop there.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank
You're
you.
changing
thank you.
people's lives for the better.
Yeah.
And keep up the good
We are
work,
humble
Miguel.
to be of service. We are
Right on.
humble.
Vance, we love you. Keep up the good work and come back anytime.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's do this again.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
And that was a chat with the guys from Aeon Byte. What'd you think, brother?
Yeah, buddy, that was good. Yep.
You like that?
Yeah, I've got so much in my head of ancient mysteries and mythologies. It's I'm learning slowly. I'm learning lots, but I mean, his show is amazing. Like all kinds of awesome topics, magic and occult and mysticism and religion and recovery and it's kind of like ours in some respects. It overlaps, but definitely ours is a little more conspiratorial.
There's always a little bit of
His
overlap.
a little more mystical, Wow.
Nah.
Yeah, great guests.
Fantastic. You know, there's a huge amount of crossover. I mean, people have been asking us to have Miguel on the show now for years.
I know.
The first
I
time,
can't believe it's been so long.
the first time I talked to Miguel about coming on the show was 2017.
Yeah.
So it's 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were close. We were going to do it. I don't know what happened. Everything fell apart at the end or something like that. But hey, it happened now. I mean, we'll do another one soon.
Yep.
Right on. Big thanks to you guys for listening to the show. We love it. It'd be no fun doing the podcast if nobody was listening. So thanks for listening. We have been trying to get a little bit of extra content out. So hopefully you appreciate that. If you are finding a little bit of value from the podcast, I think this will be like number 416 or something like that. If it's adding a little value to your life and you can afford to send a little value back our way, you can do so over at grimerica.ca/support. There's one-time donation options. There's monthly donation options. You can do Patreon, Stripe, PayPal, anything, whatever floats your boat. I think with the new PayPal thing, you don't even need to have a PayPal account to donate through PayPal anymore for you people that don't like having accounts.
Wow.
That's been for a while now. I think I mentioned it before, but it's an option.
I missed it last time you said it.
So grimerica.ca/support. We don't have any other money coming in from anywhere else. So you guys are the only thing that keep us going around here. Grimerica.ca/support.
Yep. There's other ways too,
when you
right?
can. Oh
Other
yeah,
ways,
you can support the show for free. And then just check out the show notes. There's like review the show, share the show,
Chats.
There's
swag.
You can
email us. You can Twitter Darren. You can Instagram Graham. You can
leave reviews some places.
Yeah, leave reviews. Yeah.
You can send cookies to the P.O. box. Please don't poison them. And if they are special cookies, we need to know because Graham's is sober.
Don't fucking send cookies that I'll eat.
Unless
I'm not gonna eat any cookies from the P.O. box.
That's it. Okay. It's just too risky. What are the chances your business partners? All bets are off. All the food goes straight to Darren. That's okay. I don't mind. I like food. So yeah, all that stuff. P.O. box. That's
also,
in the show
the
notes.
Black Budget feed's got some audiobooks in there that we're narrating. Got some good audiobooks in the Black Budget. If you can't afford, because to get access to the Black Budget feed, you just gotta donate anything, any one time, any monthly, anything at all. It's still value for value, but it's kind of locked in a little bit. But if you can't afford it, just send us an email and we'll give you access.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been saying is we're giving away the Black Budget for free right now.
Like all in general?
Well, that's what I said since the lockdown started and everyone lost their jobs.
Well, we kind of always have said that.
We always have said that, but I've just started saying it more loudly.
Okay, yeah.
It's just if you guys are at home bored and you got no money, just fucking email us and we'll send you the link. And there's like 100 hours of stuff. It'll keep you busy for a week.
Yeah.
Just email. If you need it, support us. If you just go donate, it just automatically bing, bang, boom. I mean, you could literally have the Black Budget feed within like 3 minutes an hour without doing anything but a couple of bucks. All right. That's all I got. I'm losing my voice from the COVID. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. Okay. Okay, we'll be back in like 10 minutes with Monica Perez.
Is she with Brad Binkley too, or?
I'm not 100% sure.
Did you make the
I only talk to Monica because I don't know these things unless someone tells me.
Told you, yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you fuckers in like 15 minutes. Stream time 108.